Well, at this time, I would like to invite to the stage the panelists for today. So if our three panelists could join us at the stage, and I'll do my introductions. Okay, well, everybody get situated. And we realize that we are the last panel between you and happy hour. So we promise that this will be a very lively discussion. And as we were just introduced, today's panel will focus on leadership dynamics in public education. And so I'd like to introduce each of our panelists. First, we have with us Dr. Cesar Maldonado, who is the Chancellor of the Houston Community College. He joined the sixth college system in 2014, and under his tenure, HCC has increased the number of its graduates, expanded the number of campus and facilities, and created academic partnerships to ensure students can seamlessly transition to specific four-year university programs. He has also fostered partnerships with private industry to create additional pathways for students to enter the workforce after obtaining an associate's degree or a certificate. He has led legislative efforts to create dual enrollment opportunities in Texas. He serves on many boards, and in 2017, the Houston Business Journal C-Suite Award Committee named him a finalist for an outstanding CEO of a nonprofit. Let's give him a round of applause before we begin.
Thank you.
Our next distinguished panelist comes to us from the University of Texas System, and that would be Chancellor James Milliken, who is the chancellor of that system, which is one of the largest public university systems in Texas, and is the largest in Texas, and is one of the largest in the United States, with 14 health and academic institutions. The UT system enrolls more than 240,000 students and employs more than 100,000 healthcare professionals, researchers, faculty, and support staff. Under his leadership of over 30 years' experience throughout major institutions around this country, he has received numerous prestigious awards, and we would never get to happy hour if we went through all of them. But I would say among the most accomplished are a Fulbright Award for Global Education, and he currently is a member of the Council for Foreign Relations and Business Higher Education Forum, both very prestigious. So let's give him a round of applause. And finally, last but not least, certainly, we have Chancellor Mike Reeser with us. He is the Chancellor and CEO of the Texas State Technical College, and this is the only statewide two-year technical college system with 10 campuses across the state. Under his leadership, TSTC has become well known as being highly innovative in higher education operations, including the development of a return value funding formula, a state funding method based on student employment outcomes, and the money back employment guarantee. This is an employment assurance program that refunds tuition for students who cannot find a job after earning a TSTC degree, and that certainly is highly innovative. He also has served in various roles at his institution prior to becoming the Chancellor and CEO, including Chief Financial Officer, College President, and Dean of Instruction. And before joining higher education, as part of his career, he was a banker who served in executive and management roles. Let's give him a round of applause as well. So what I'd like to do is pose a few questions and ask each of you to go ahead and answer those questions, but we certainly will, given the distinguished nature of this panel, I will allow you to add any comments that you see fit on some of these topics. So let's begin by discussing 60 by 30 Texas. Texas adopted 60 by 30 Texas to advance the well-being of Texans and the state's economy. What challenges do you think that the state and its colleges and universities must address to fulfill the goals of this plan? So, would you like to go first, Dr. Maldonado?
Sure. Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Well, yeah, it's important that you hear what I want to say because we're a pipeline to the universities in the state. I think all of us face common bottlenecks in achieving the throughput to 60 by 30. And some of them are not commonly known or recognized. We heard some of them earlier today about the adult learners. Without engaging the adult learners, we will not meet the goals of 60 by 30. Without making sure that we have our facilities aligned to meet that throughput, to be able to provide the capacities, without increasing the transition to college from high school graduates that today's running at about a little over 50%. And without increasing all of those, we're going to struggle to achieve 60 by 30. So those are common problems that we have. Aligning the curriculum to allow the students to move on to universities is also something that we need to master. And we're working on that. The coordinating board's got a critical role in that. So from my view, those are at least the top elements that are challenging 60 by 30.
Chancellor Milliken?
Thanks. Well, I'd agree with all that. At the 10,000-foot level, I mean, what Texas is trying to do is impressive. And when I got here 14 months ago and first read the 60 by 30, I was pleased that I think the state had the right goals in mind. Actually, this is what now everybody's trying to do across the country because of what we know about the future of work and the degrees requirements for the new jobs created. In 10 years, it'll be 100% of all new jobs will require some education beyond high school, whether it's community college, senior college, or certificates. The problem is we haven't done a very good job to date at this. And I'm not talking about Texas, I'm talking about everybody. I mean, my generation was first in the world in terms of educational attainment, 25 to 34-year-olds. We're now 15, 16, 17, something like that in the world. So we have been not going up at the rate that we need to, while other countries have been going up much faster. So in a relative sense, we're losing our competitive edge in terms of knowledge and innovation and a talented workforce. So we have a work cut out for us, and it is going to require a lot of effective strategies and working together. I don't think we're going to get to the goal of 60% of 25 to 34-year-olds by 2030 if we don't collaborate and cooperate better than we are today. And again, it's no knock on Texas. This is a problem that's universal. In the other 3 states that I've worked in, it's the same set of issues. We need to make sure that we have a birth to lifelong learning and retooling philosophy and set of strategies in place so that people come to school ready to succeed, they emerge from high school ready to go to college, and in my view, increasingly that doesn't mean with a 12th grade education ready to go to college, it means college credit before you graduate. As much as we can get early college, dual credit programs so that students come to colleges not only ready, but also along the path to earning a degree. We know from the data that they will be more successful in earning that degree if they do so. Then we need to do a better job, all of us and all of you, in the seamless transfer between community colleges, 2-year and 4-year education in this state. There was important legislation during the last legislative session to move this along. I'm pleased with the coordinating board's focus on this, and I've had a couple of conversations with the new commissioner. I'm delighted with their focus on it. But this is something that we have to do a better job of. Without all of these things in place, and finally, it's not anymore a strategy, and you all know this. A 2-year or 4-year degree is going to set you for life. People change careers 5 times by the time they're 35 now. And so our system, the way we think about higher education in Texas, has to be lifelong education, retooling, and technology has advanced the pace of necessary retooling so that people can continue to move up throughout their career, retool and move on to new jobs, or even maintain the one they have. So if I had one thing to say about the challenge and the key to success, it's about how effectively we collaborate. All of the stakeholders and the institutions and the governing boards in this higher education continuum.
So I have this first word of advice. Never follow these guys. So I'd like to build on what was said. I too agree with the chancellor's, but I'll couch it in a different notion. I think both talked about the notion of alignment, and I think that a big challenge, and in terms of collaboration, alignment is about collaboration. But I think one of the things that I'm troubled by is if we get to our numerical goals contained in Goal 1 and Goal 2 of 60 by 30, but we fail to get Goal 3 right, we will not have made things better. And in order to get Goal 3 right, we're going to have to get the alignment better. And we're going to have to get alignment better with this notion. Start with the end in mind. What is it that we're preparing kids for? And how will we shape what we do to make sure that we have the right quantity and the right quality for what that end demands? So we don't have a very good history as a sector of reverse engineering our mix in such a way that we can have the end in mind. And so in addition to all of those things that you just heard, I think alignment that, and I always get in trouble when I say this, but trouble is where I live sometimes. If you look at the notion of a supply chain, you can reach inspired approaches to how it is we link together the various components of education with the ultimate citizenship and employment goals that we look for. But you have to start down at that end and work backwards. And our history is to start with what we want to do and jam it forward. So that'll be our biggest challenge.
Excellent. Well, the next question you already began to answer a bit by talking about collaboration. So let me ask a specific question, and that is, how can the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board facilitate and strengthen questions? And I'll let Chancellor Reeser go first this time, so he does not have the last seat.
Oh, darn. No, tell me this one again.
Okay, let me say it again. Sorry, that was unfair of me.
I told you I live in trouble.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
How can the coordinating board help to facilitate the collaboration or the reverse engineering, as you spoke about? What role can they play? How can they help higher education to achieve those goals?
I think Goal 3, the marketable skills, is going to be the magic that happens in this plan. And the co-board is doing some great work in terms of getting started on that and helping us all understand what it means to teach to a particular outcome. It's particularly troublesome from the standpoint of a lot of what we do in higher ed is based on scholarship and not necessarily the notion of being a practitioner. And scholarship is a noble and valuable notion that we do. We'll have to add those concepts of practitionership, if you will. And that's what marketable skills are. So I think the co-board could play a leadership role. The first thing they've done already is, with the governor's request, created the tri-agency situation. So we're talking to workforce, we're talking to secondary ed and higher ed, all in a very intentional way. And in marketable skills will be an inevitable result of that.
Excellent. Chancellor Maldonado?
Well, I think the role, an important role the coordinating board can play is in the alignment, in the collaboration. And we're doing some things at Houston Community College and addressing the need for baccalaureate degrees, not by starting our own, but by forming partnerships with the universities around us. Now, arguably, I can throw a rock and hit a university, and not all community colleges have that privilege. But informing those partnerships and sharing data and putting together the agreements, we do need to take novel approaches. And in some cases, if you read through the 50-page MOU that we have, we're not doing 1/3 of the things that are in that MOU, but it was written 20 years ago. No one's really looked at updating it. If you start with a blank sheet of paper, you can we can get close to a joint venture. An example is we have some partnerships, University of Houston downtown, where we share facilities, we share faculty, we co-develop curriculum for a bachelor's of science in nursing. It is the least expensive that we've been able to find BSN in the state. And we do that by having our full-time faculty be their adjuncts, vice versa. When the students move from the ADN to the BSN, there's no friction in terms of the instructional component because they go into the same place. Those types of partnerships, I believe, are going to be one of the solutions toward reaching 60 by 30. And the coordinating board can play a role of having us share best practices to develop models that are the least expensive to the students and to the state.
Excellent. Chancellor Milliken?
Now I know what you mean. A lot of the ground's been covered.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of work that's been done in recent years, more broadly in education, about mindset. And I think there's an analogy here that the way the coordinating board can be enormously helpful is the right mindset on how it approaches its work, the right philosophy. So I know that there are requirements, regulatory role of the board. But the real opportunity, it seems to me, is as an enabler, a supporter, a nurturer, a convener. You have the seat, the table, place at the table to bring everyone together from across sectors. And I'd say use that and use it in a way that is supportive, enabling, nurturing. One of the things that the coordinating board has now that really none of the rest of us have is an enormously rich set of data across Texas and across all institutions. We need to work with the coordinating board on how we can all use that data better to make informed decisions. And so it seems to me this is a place where we ought to work together. But I think the key is the coordinating board's role as a convener and a supporter of the institutions who are actually delivering the courses and educating the students across the state of Texas.
Excellent. Well, we also have with us today in the audience many members of governing boards and board members. So it's a great opportunity for us to also talk about what they can do to help us secure the investments and the policy changes needed to achieve the state's higher education goals. So at this time, Chancellor Milliken, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, I'll speak to my board members. For some reason,
You have to
sitting
speak
way
to
in the
all
back
of
of the
them.
room. I'm not sure why. I hope not to embarrass them. So, one of the things that's important, you are the fiduciaries for these great assets in the state of Texas that are going to make the difference between whether Texas is competitive and successful and economically rich and whether Texans have the opportunity that they need to be successful in the next generations. And I would urge all board members, and I know the diligent ones that are in this room have already done this, but become as familiar as you can with, of course, the 60 by 30 goals and strategies, but ask your institutions. I mean, you may have other things on your screen, the strategic plans for your institutions or your systems, there may be goals beyond educational attainment and completion and debt. I get that, and there probably should be. At ours, for instance, we have a $3 billion research agenda. It is exceedingly important for us and important to the state of Texas. But one of the most important roles board members can play is to understand their system or institution's role in the state and what it needs to do to achieve the best outcomes for the state, and then hold the administrators accountable for that. Ask them what they are doing regularly to advance the agenda to achieve those goals that you've set. I mean, you haven't been appointed to manage the institutions and to roll up your sleeves, although you may want to sometimes, and you may have some ideas about how it ought to be done. But your role is to set these goals and to monitor their progress and to put in place the right administrative leadership to achieve them, and then to ensure that they're doing that and give them the tools they need, the help they need to do it, the kick they may need to do it sometimes. But to be an active, effective board member, you have to execute your role as the fiduciary for the people of Texas to ensure that these institutions that they invest so much in are delivering on the goals that are important to them.
Chancellor Reeser?
How can I beat that? Let's see. How can I add is a better way to say it. The regents, the trustees' job is to indeed set a direction and then monitor for that. What I might also add is I'll go back to the alignment thing. To the extent that you could help with either upstream or downstream efforts to communicate, that certainly wouldn't hurt. It troubles me that we have an educational system that was built in tranches, and these tranches have disconnections between them. The linkage is often not a linkage but a void, and by setting the proper direction and goals, regents can begin to seek higher ed who is reaching in both directions to eliminate some of those voids and turn them into bridges or linkages instead of, I like Cesar's expression, the friction that you talk about. Look at the enormous friction that exists in between high school and college. Our new commissioner spoke about it today, about graduating from a high school at the top of his class and going to Notre Dame and finding he was a D student for the first semester. Why is that okay? Well, the regents are the beginning of addressing that and saying that's not okay. And we're going to imagine a higher ed that reaches out and creates linkages upstream and downstream that solves that problem. That's one challenge you could consider.
And I know you, now it's your turn to be last. I'm so sorry.
Well, I have a trustee president, plus this is being filmed, so I need to be careful with my words. But, no sitting trustees have asked me this, but I have been asked, how much does the gasoline cost? How many gallons do we use, and where are we buying it? And my response was, I have no idea. I'm running a system that's got over 100,000 students. It's got a bunch of employees. I can tell you we've got about 13,000 parking spaces. But that's about it. I think if trustees could understand that what we do is wonderfully complex, and I spent 30 years in chemical engineering dealing with some pretty complicated things. But, in math, the solution is always the same. The number 2 doesn't change itself like a human does going through our processes. And we put systems in place to deal with this large number of students, but they're human. And what we have is complex, and I don't think, at least in my system, there's no one individual that really understands the detail of everything that goes on. And there's an affinity for particularly new trustees in an effort to learn more, want to get into the details. And I think keeping that 20,000-foot perspective and selecting goals that push the alignment, that make us have more throughput. And sometimes this is a common discussion about enrollment. Well, enrollment's down. Well, we increased graduates by 2,000 this semester. Yeah, but enrollment's down. Well, you heard earlier, Houston ISD, which is our largest feeder, has some very serious problems. So our dual credit is down with Houston ISD. Well, that's, yeah, okay, but enrollment's down. Well, we're working, and these are long, the solutions take a few years. And I'm convinced, working with my colleagues throughout the state, that we're all moving in the right direction. We need to do some tweaking. This alignment's very important to reduce the friction, to make sure that we maintain the standards of rigor in spite of increasing throughput. Because if we don't do that, at the end, we're not really adding any skill sets to our graduates. So it goes back to the collaboration, and if board members should support the collaboration and in that way set metrics that really move us towards 60 by 30 as opposed to granular numbers that really don't add up in a positive way at the end.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, we have a few moments left. Would anybody like to make any closing comments?
I've got the best board in the world.
That was actually going to be my closing
Oh, you
comment.
beat
so.
me to it. Beat me to it. Here's one other thing I'd like to say about board members and how we are fortunate. I think in this country, in the way that for the last few hundred years we developed higher education, and it is unique in the world, and that is with a group of lay board members who bring not their professional experience in education typically to the board, but bring their experience from other professions, other work, from their political activities, from their social activities to the institution or the system. And it is a way of adding richness and complexity and not to mention the relationships that it brings to the institution, but it brings something else to the discussion in representing the people of Texas on the board. And it's enormously important. It's an enormous strength and something we should never take for granted. So, when an administrator says to me, well, I have a passive board, I do whatever I want, I think that's dysfunctional. What you want is a board that's engaged, that pushes you, that pulls you, that you don't want to fight with the board, but you want a little creative tension there. You want you want people who are adding to the discussion, and I think that's a way to be an effective board member. And so first of all, I guess I'd say thank you to all of you who serve on these boards for what you do. I know the pay is typically not enormous, but I can hardly think of any better or more important work that people could do than to vote themselves to the futures of these young Texans, where talent and opportunity are not always matched up. And education and higher education in this country and in this state is the difference maker. And you're engaged in an activity that's going to make a difference for millions of people. So I thank you for that.
I'll offer this as a closing remark. Regents and trustees, as you consider our new plan, 60 by 30, as I referred to before, all 4 goals are equally important. Please don't imagine a future in which you made 3 out of 4 and call that a good one, because they interact in such a way that the real power of this plan, which is mutual prosperity for Texans and the employers and the economy, that's what the plan is all about, is great citizens who are gainfully employed and intelligent contributors to our democracy. That's what it's all about. But if you only get the numbers, it's not going to work. If you teach some great skills, but we don't get enough of them, it's not going to work. If you manage to be affordable, but we don't get enough people through, it's not going to work. We have to realize all four goals. And for us to do that, it starts with you insisting that we try.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists. I would also like to thank everyone who stayed for this panel, and certainly to the coordinating board for allowing us the opportunity to discuss this important issue. And although I am an incredibly proud member of the A&M system and very glad to work for Chancellor John Sharp, I think we certainly can see that all of us in the state of Texas are very fortunate to have so many dedicated chancellors and outstanding systems. So thank you for your time.
You do know there's two out of three up there, right?
I was going to say.